Hello, YouTube. My name is Vince White. I'm an employment attorney on this channel. We answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. I've got a question here from YouTube user TV Rating, who says, "Hi, Vince. I am pro se, and I'm suing the Nielsen Company, which is the company behind the Nielsen TV ratings. And the defendant's memorandum of law in support of their motion to dismiss the amended complaint, they minimized a racial slur to just a racial term. Rude. Don't like that one bit. The magistrate judge even called them out on that in her report and recommendation, which I will quote below with the racial slur redacted." Nice. Well done. Classy. Defendants refer to this statement as the use of a racial term. Lest there be any confusion moving forward in this case, the word redacted is a racial slur, not a racial term. Furthermore, it is a slur that is still unfortunately used to demean people of Asian descent well into the present day. My question is, if the Nielsen Company argues they did not realize the racial slur was in fact a racial slur, or thought that it was no big deal, would that be a valid defense? Thank you for reading my question. I look forward to any insight you have. Okay, so we're not really making up a hypothetical. We're talking about a situation that arose in a case many, many moons ago, and we're changing the names and the identifying characteristics to make sure that we're not talking about an actual situation. We're picking a different cartoon character than the cartoon character who was originally involved in this case. There was a gentleman working at a job, as we do. Everybody works, not everybody wins. And for whatever reason, his manager associated a particular cartoon character or cartoon universe, I guess, with this gentleman's national origin / race group, and would refer to this gentleman as that specific cartoon character over and over and over again as a form of discrimination. It was a slur, and this manager was very clear to the gentleman that I'm describing that this was a slur. So we're going to call it a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. So hypothetically, in our hypothetical, this manager was calling this potential client a Ninja Turtle over and over and over again. Now, there were other coworkers who did not understand that the phrase Ninja Turtle was discriminatory, was referencing this individual's national origin / race. They did not know that. It was not immediately apparent. So now you got a situation where the bad actor and the victim both know. When the bad actor says, "You're my favorite Ninja Turtle," he knows, and the victim knows, the plaintiff knows what he's doing. But there were other coworkers who would not understand that and just started being like, calling the victim here like Donatello or Michelangelo, or like making reference to Ninja Turtles. Like, "Oh, you're such a Raphael today." Like silly comments like that, not knowing. Here, we have an interesting situation because we have a bad actor who's using a self-created slur that they have defined for us conveniently to let the victim know, hey, this is racial animus. This is national origin discrimination. But the other people are not in the know. They're not aware of why so-and-so, this victim, I hate the phrase victim, but this plaintiff is being called a Ninja Turtle. They don't know. But they opt in because it's fun and silly and seems harmless. Our bad actor is, without question, engaged in discrimination. He is inventing new terms of hate speech. He is treating someone badly on the basis of their protected classes, here, national origin and race. And he is kind enough to explain the quiet part out loud. Yes, I'm calling you a Ninja Turtle because I want to mock your national origin and your race. I think less of you. It was like that explicit. That person's clearly doing bad things. That person is discriminating. The other people aren't. They're not treating the victim poorly on the basis of a protected class. They don't know that that's what they're doing. They don't know. There's no intent, right? They're not meaning to use hate speech. And it's not as if it's something where you can argue, well, they knew or should have known, right? There's a lot of racial terms. I'm not going to start rattling them off here. Where like you can be like, you if you want, you can say, well, I didn't know that was a racial term. Great. I'm glad you don't travel in those circles. But it's a knew or should have known standard. Like you should have known. There's not too many white people strolling around dropping hateful racial terms who can really pull off the, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. I didn't know that was hateful. Yeah, it's 2025. You should have known. You know, listen, and it's a spectrum, right? If there's a racial slur for a culture in another language that in this non-English language, the racial slur for this culture is child, right? One country, the people of one country call the people of another country, their slur for those people is just to call them child, as if they're not adults. They're minors. Like, they're just not as smart as adults. They're not fully functioning people. They call them child. Very hateful, pervasive. But if somebody who's not involved in either of those cultures heard that and just thought that was the word in some other language for the people of a given country, and then uses that word thinking that's just the word, that's how we correctly say this, they're not purposefully carrying forward and disseminating discrimination, right? Now, this is different than implicit bias, right? Implicit bias is like, hey, I didn't think about discriminating, but I did. I did bad things. Still potentially a claim, right? If there's disparate treatment, you can argue all day long, well, listen, I didn't know. I didn't know that I don't promote women. I didn't know that I terminate women at a 10x higher rate than men. I didn't know that women don't get invites to my meetings. I didn't know that women get 20% of the talk time in my presentations as my male staff get. I didn't know. Okay, you didn't know, but you should have known, and that's implicit bias, and you're really hurting people. That is different. That is different than, hey, I thought this was the good and respectful word to use. Or I thought this was a harmless joke, and so I used it, and I really, truly, sincerely can convince people that I didn't know, and I meant well. Those are two different things, right? So to answer your question, excuse me, to answer your question, and I'll read it one last time. My question is, if Nielsen argues they did not realize the racial slur was in fact a racial slur, or thought it was no big deal, would that be a valid defense? It would. But it doesn't sound like that argument's going to be available to them. It's not as though, I suspect, and I don't, the word itself is redacted here, but I suspect it's not some esoteric, long-lost phrase that there's no way the people at Nielsen wouldn't know. I suspect, right? And part of why I suspect that is because there's no point in using hate speech that nobody understands that then doesn't fulfill the purpose of hate speech. The purpose of hate speech is to let other people know that you don't like a group and to let that group know that you don't like them. That is the purpose of hate speech, right? And if you use coded hate speech, that's coded so well that no one knows, defeats the purpose, right? That's why there's openly known terms, slurs, right? A word that nobody knows the meaning of doesn't fulfill the purpose of the word. So it's going to be hard for Nielsen, I think, to make an argument like, sure, we knew that you could call Asian people Asian. We understood that that's possible. Like, you could just call Caucasian people Caucasian and African American people African American and Asian people Asian. Like, that we understood that there's terms. We didn't want to use those terms. We used another term, a different racial term. You did. And you departed from the accepted term for a reason. It wasn't that you just needed an extra term. You weren't just trying to use your thesaurus in your drafting to make sure that you didn't use the word Asian too many times, I suspect. I suspect you used an alternate term for a reason, right? Word choice matters. And that alternate word was chosen for a reason. And it's hard to believe that Nielsen will be able to argue that that alternate term, that slur, was chosen for some innocent reason. Why would you need more ways to refer to Asian people? Why? Just doesn't seem like that's a need that comes up that often. So it's an uphill battle for them to argue like, oh, I didn't know that racial term was a slur. I'm not saying it's, you couldn't make that argument. You could. They could try. I'm just saying that's an uphill battle. That's a tough one. I don't think that's a winning argument. Based on the way you set it out here, it doesn't sound like that's a winning argument. It doesn't sound like that magistrate judge in the federal court system thinks it's a good argument either. That magistrate judge seems to think they are dumb and that they did bad things. And that the way they are choosing to try to defend this is asinine based on how you're presenting this. So I wouldn't be too worried about the like, oh, I didn't know that was racist argument. That is certainly an argument that can be made and can sincerely carry the day. Here, it does not sound that viable based on what you shared with me. Anyways, I hope this helps TV rating. Like, subscribe, comment down below. Share our channel so it can grow. And I wish you great success with your case. Don't be like me. Don't be a failure. Go forth and win your case. Take care. I'm not a failure because I lost the case, for the record.